Yeah.
Marty has grown a really nice beard since we last talked with him. Thanks for joining us again, Marty. It's always good to start off with just a little bit of how you got where you're at in your asset management journey. Maybe you can tell us about your how you got involved with the Henry George School of Social
Yeah.
Science.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can boil this down to see about 9 or 10 minutes. So, yeah, my name is Marty Rowland, and I welcome everybody to the presentation today. Let me start out by saying I've been with the Asset Leadership Network since I think around 2014, 15, somewhere around there. So I
Yep.
moved to New York City in the the end of 2008. I started working for the Parks Department in 2009. Been there about 15 years. So even though my doctoral research had to do with water resource management and uh, water supply and property regimes, I I did take some courses and we touched on who Henry George was, but it never really registered as something that I found extremely interesting. I guess it's because they never really presented it that way. But as soon as I moved to New York City, I was found out about Henry George School because somebody tried to mail a pamphlet to somebody in my housing unit and they couldn't deliver it. So it was sitting there on the counter and I picked it up and that's how it all started. Since that time, I've become a member of the board of trustees. I've been teaching um, courses. In fact, this is kind of timely because May 20th, I'm giving a 10 class uh, course on the science of political economy. So I have this opportunity to plug that. And I think what I'll do is I'll give you the link for people to sign up and register. So that's how I became involved. Now, because of my involvement with the Henry George School and the ideas of Henry George, the former editor of the American Journal of Economics and Sociology wanted to retire, and what he said was that he couldn't think of anybody else that could possibly take on that responsibility. And maybe he saw something in me that I wasn't seeing. But it's been a lot of
Well, we
fun.
saw it too. That's why we made you an ALN Senior Fellow, Marty.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm into my second special edition on. We're going to call it the politics of climate change. But what we're here today is to talk about the third special edition, which is coming out in the fall. And I titled it The Social Aspects of Physical Asset Management. And we started working on that. You know, Mike and I have been working on that ever since we made contact with Shivenju Sharma, who is a big proponent of tiny forests. So that's how the idea for this special edition came up, is that we'll look at tiny forests and how that can uh, change the the movement toward addressing climate change and carbon sequestration. And then the more we thought about it, we thought, well, we've got people in Asset Leadership Network that are involved in hospital best practices, and so we would tap that, and we've got other ideas for moving in that direction. Uh, I guess that's a short overview of how I
That's
to this point.
that's really good, Marty. So let me recap a little bit. Um, the Henry George School of Social Science is based on Henry George's work, which goes back to a couple centuries, and it advocates a property tax approach where you improve the value of land. And the example that you used for me is if you're building a bridge over a river, you know that the value of the land near the bridge on either side of the river is going to increase, and then the increase in property taxes of that land can be used to pay for the bridge. That's a
Yeah,
real overly simple approach,
yeah,
but his philosophy is still advocated. His book is still the most uh, purchased book on sociology and economics. And then the American Journal of Economics and Sociology is not directly related to just the Henry George approach. It is broader and reaches out to
yeah.
more.
Well, let
And
me clarify a few things. So,
okay,
the American Journal of Economic Sociology was started by a follower of Henry George. So, since 1941, I think, he wanted to have a forum for a variety of ideas. He didn't want it just as a mouthpiece for a political movement, but he wanted to open it up. And then the editor would have that opportunity to say, well, you've just read all these ideas. Here's how to understand those in a coherent way within the philosophy of Henry George. So that's what I do in my job as a special editions editor. It's been a lot of fun doing that. Um, so maybe to correct, the first book, major book that Henry George wrote was called Progress and Poverty. He was in San Francisco at the time when he wrote it, and that's really where he got the original ideas for the understanding the dynamics of uh, land value. So 1879 was the year he published that, and then shortly after that moved to New York City. So it's been like 140 years, to be exact. And so the course I'm teaching on May 20th, starting up, is his last book, which provides us an opportunity to take in what he learned throughout his professional career, and kind of as he actually the book was published post-mortem, like a year after he passed away, 1897, and it's a real critical period in the development of economic thought, because shortly thereafter, that's when the way economics is currently taught kind of kicked in with the I think they call it the neoclassical method of economics, looking at marginal improvements and taking land out of the equation in terms of well, taking land out of the labor capital land trifecta, let's say. So what happened after he passed away, the idea that land is just another type of capital, and with that, in our opinion, the whole economic profession has gone downhill in terms of the social aspects.
and yet the discussion we were having before we joined the team here is that um, asset management is a path for serving both economic and sociological needs, and that the infrastructure bill and the semiconductor bill, which is pumping a lot of money into the United States, is proving that out. And even though it's not under an asset management banner, the increase in jobs and the increase in economic fortune of the United States relative to other countries post pandemic is evident. And the journal edition on asset management gives us a forum for driving home the fact that it is possible to address seemingly untenable issues. and we can bring it right back to Henry George and his desire to reduce poverty. We now call that inclusion, diversity, and equity. And so I think we're doing a good job of following a very well founded set of ideas. And we thank you for letting us use the journal as a way to express our ideas and get it out to a wider audience and make the concept of asset management tied to social and economics issues more readily accessible.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very important point that you make about the legislation that was just passed. I've been taking a course that actually just finished on modern monetary theory, and actually there's a lot of overlap between Henry George's idea and those ideas, but in particular has to do with there's never any worry for inflation when you invest in those things that add to the productive capacity of the nation. When the federal government says, let's build the infrastructure, build the grid, people get busy and they start doing things, and that it's kind of like laying the foundation, providing the linkages, and it just increases the division of labor, as opposed to, let's say, creating money and let's my the way I describe it is doing crazy studies like let's say the sex life of butterflies in Wyoming or something, but when you do your hard infrastructure and things that society needs, you're never in a wrong direction, and it's all political choices. It's good that we're going that direction.
And I loved how last week, when the panel was talking about the National Institute of Building Sciences activities that we're fortunate to be involved with, are going to result in a paper, you were able to see that that type of work could be appropriate for the journal.
Yeah, yeah. I think I chimed in when they're in the middle of their presentation and they're talking about getting stakeholder feedback, and I thought that was a great way into the ideas that we're talking about, social aspects, because the way that they were describing it, buildings, and I think they were talking about smart buildings, but it was more than just the technology. It was the idea of really getting in tune with what people wanted to see, and the benefits way before that the buildings are built, because location's important, and leveraging one um, operation with another operation, or just leaving open the possibility of something that you don't know what it's going to be, but at least you factor in the possibility that we haven't discovered everything in the world today, that there's um, future developments that we need to be on the lookout for. I guess maybe the best way to describe it.
Yes, since this is a call for papers, this version of this edition of ALN Thursday at 3, I've invited Kimono Numa to join us and talk a little bit about it so that people observing can see how they can be involved in a dialogue with you and being able to have a paper presented for the fall edition of the journal.
Yeah, let me
Kimon?
yeah, let's listen to Kimon.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I'm just jumping in here if that's okay. Thanks, Marty. Those are great points, and I really admire your thinking throughout all this, and the tiny forest and all of the connections to everything. One observation I like to make is, and since you mentioned butterflies, I put it in the link too, but butterflies can have an impact on the environment and everything else, right?
Yeah.
And the problem is, in nature, that happens naturally, right? I mean, just kind of everything's connected to everything. The problem is that in asset management and in our industry, things are not connected. We're using the wrong tools. We're using the wrong technologies. We're hallucinating because we have bad connections. So we can't make good decisions. And that's essentially what we've been focusing on with the NIBS conference and the use of technology such as digital twins, which is essentially our systems talking to each other. So if you have systems talk to each other, the butterfly can flap its wings and have an impact on the environment, blah, 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 all the way down. I think that that should be our challenge of how do we mimic what nature already does and bring it into what we're doing in a very poor way. Historically, we are really good at, we're very smart, obviously, and we're identifying these problems, but we're constantly looking at old ways of solving them where there already are technologies today to call up an Uber and bring it to us on the corner with just a push of a button. So how do we make that complexity simple yet still stay interconnected, and also just bring it up as a topic like you are, that things are connected, everything's connected to everything. And that bridge example that we were talking about earlier is another great example too. If a bridge is being built and the surrounding real estate has no idea the bridge is being built, and yeah, nothing's going to happen. But as soon as if there's a connection, then reactions can happen, good or bad. And that's just my kind of view of what triggered from your intro here.
Yeah. Yeah, let me pick up on that because one of the problems that society faces is this idea of being a free rider and seeing an opportunity and being the first one and being a monopolist. So the example of the bridge, of course, a community-minded person would say, "Yeah, I love being on that other side of the bridge." And I don't mind paying that land value tax because it's providing me an opportunity to have a productive business. But somebody could come along and say, let me get my congressman to lower my land value tax. So there's fewer resources, fewer services. Everything starts going downhill because of the greed that's implied in that. Trying to get something over somebody else. So that's the challenge in asset management is getting the resources that are required to have what we need, and everybody paying their fair share rather than trying to get one over on somebody.
Yeah, the competing interests, right? Who has yeah, the complexity is just too much, which kind of goes into the next topic that we're talking about as well, just the use of AI. And just if we ignore AI for a second, think in terms of intelligence. We're all intelligent beings. We make decisions based on what we know. And if you layer artificial intelligence into it, I just see it as another tool that helps us see the patterns that are not visible just with our own limited intelligence or our limited connectivity. So how can we flip that around and use what we think sometimes is it's actually scary and fascinating at the same time what AI can do, but how can we use that to actually help us solve some of these complex problems?
Yeah. Well, earlier, I'm not sure we recorded that initial discussion between me and Mike, but I was bringing up the show that just finished on public TV called The History of the Future. And one of the points was made was that the difference between AI, which is like smart, as opposed to wisdom. And the question of whether AI will ever develop that wisdom, which I kind of doubt that it will, but I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier to Mike is that what the show was doing primarily is showing all the important people that are on the cutting edge of this and that, but what wasn't said in that whole series was the need for, I think Mike put it best, for people to have that avenue to make their contribution to society, to be the best that they can be. And I see that through the various infrastructure type jobs, and I can relate my experience working for the New York City Parks Department. So that's providing me the income to do the 3 or 4 other things that I do during the week and during the year, including being a senior fellow on the Asset Leadership Network. but I'm also involved in ASTM, Henry George, a few other things. So I think that's the key, and I thought that Mike did a real good job of identifying what's missing in that future look, the need for people. So, I don't want to say that my job at the Parks Department is boring, but sometimes it's kind of, I'm doing the same kind of things day after day. But I don't know, being a policeman might be boring, or a
Oh,
teacher.
never would that be the case.
Yeah, but see but a lot of those things people take for granted, like you know, like I get born and I wake up and I get to be 18. I discover things, and well, all those infrastructure things are just there. Somebody pays for them. Um, so I think through these activities that we do and through this journal, we might be able to tap into that missing factor of how we're all important in the vision for the future. And it may not be obvious, it may not be sexy, like the guy that creates something that made him a billionaire. We should be happy that we've got food to eat and friends to communicate with, and good night's sleep.
My point earlier, before we were joined by everyone, was that we're facing a world of problems together as a single human race. And in order to address the issues, everyone has to be at their highest level of productivity.
Yeah.
And by definition, you are not at your highest level of productivity if you are not doing what you love to do. So, asset management is a channel by which we can align people in a valuable way to the things that they love to do. And that was just one of my ways of expressing how asset management is an opportunity in that way.
Yeah, that was good. Well, I did want to mention that if you want to write an article in this journal special edition, I was looking for a synopsis by the July 1st, but the articles would be due sometime in September. So you got plenty of time, and especially if you've already written on this topic, you just need to move sentences and paragraphs around. I'd be happy to see those.
I am putting your email in the chat,
Yeah.
so that people can contact you directly.
Okay. Yeah, I know I got several.
Should I use your Gmail instead of your Parks?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good email to use.
Okay. So, Kimon, do you think there's a possibility that we might be able to turn your work with Nibs into an article for the American Journal of Economics and Sociology?
That would be very interesting. Definitely. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think as you were talking about New York and the parks, I think one thing that's interesting is kind of this whole thing of impact of, if you go back to the tiny forest, the fact that there was wisdom early on in New York to build Central Park, which had a huge impact on everything, right?
Yeah.
And if that wisdom wasn't there, it seems apparent, but it's not always apparent, right? If you don't put that in front of somebody to make that decision, unless you see, well, what's the ROI? Why should we spend so much space on this park? Well, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be near the park or whatever. The real estate goes up around the park.
Yeah.
It becomes the symbol of New York, pretty much. So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Interesting comparison in Chicago. Chicago has 23 miles of publicly accessible land on the freshwater Lake Michigan. That was put into place. There was a big fight because industrialists want to be on the water for easy shipping. Well, we won, and we've got a great park system, 23 miles along fresh water. As soon as you cross over the border to Indiana, it's almost industrial wasteland for an hour until you get around into Michigan. And I see the future of that land having a higher value, serving recreational purposes for people who require fresh water, and converting a lot, if not all, of that industrial land for human residents and recreation and parks and recreation.
No, that's really really interesting description of the geography there. I just recently saw a presentation that's going to be made to our parks designers and had to do with Brooklyn primarily and all the industrialization along Brooklyn, and now it's all being converted to parkland. And of course, there's a lot of chemicals that need to be dug up and dealt with. But so Indiana can move toward that kind of vision, and I think the description that you make is very good about the being near the shipping and the water, because what happened over the years is that the people in those industries took advantage of the environmental amenities and didn't pay back to society, let's say, their use of that. So that was what made their businesses a little bit more profitable. And it's apparent that they didn't take those profits and plow them back into the city. But even if they did, it didn't go toward where they took the environmental amenities, reducing those values.
What we're talking about here is an evolution of humanity, where we are starting to understand and be able to implement concepts such as the ones by Henry George in a way that's practical, because we now have tools and processes that Kimon Onuma represents and demonstrates so well. And it's an honor for the Asset Leadership Network to be part of a forum to bring these ideas out forward. So, Marty, thank you for what you're doing and the opportunity that you're providing. I see so many attendees on this program that could write papers.
Yeah.
I've put my email address in there too. If you want to bounce some ideas off of me before you bring them to Marty, please reach out. And I'm not going to call out anybody in particular, but I know there's passionate people who might be willing to write 3,000 to 4,000 word paper for the journal.
Yeah. Well, let me just maybe finish up by just maybe describing a little bit more clearly what Henry George was thinking about, because he was concerned about the increasing value of land as people come together, form cities, form societies, division of labor goes up, and of course the land value goes up with that. So it only makes sense, and it's really an example of a circular economy where the land value is tapped and plowed back into those things that made the community worth as much as it is. But beyond that, there's always the what's called economic rent that monopolists make, because they have the ability to direct things in their interest. And he was also concerned about that because it's another type of rent that doesn't need to be privatized. So those are the ideas that I'm advocating. It's part of the passion, I suppose, I've got, the way that Mike described it.
Excellent. And Kimon, if you can, will you please share the PowerPoint that I sent you? Did you receive that?
Yes, I got it. Yeah, I could share it. Do you see my screen?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, thank you to Marty for this program. And we need to update your photo,
Yeah.
Marty. Get somebody to take a picture of you with that cool beard and send that to us.
Okay.
thank you very much. And we also like to thank our patron members who we sometimes use as tech assistants. Next slide, Kimon, includes your logo.
If I can get to
If
it,
you,
yeah.
yeah. And Jacobs and Mantech and ABS Quality Evaluations and CGI. And of course, Onuma. The next slide shows all of our members, and please reach out to us if you're interested in joining and having some of your ideas and efforts and best practices showcased. And then there's a lot coming up. So next week we have another workshop with Kimon. And Kimon, you want to talk a little bit about who else is going to be on this in addition to Cyril Verlet, president
Yeah.
of ALN member organization CDV Systems.
Right, and Zara Gorbani from Penn State and a co-chair of the Digital Twin Integration Subcommittee of the National Institute of Building Sciences. It's a mouthful, but we have acronyms. And then Anta Burjad, who I think I got his name pronunciation wrong, but anyway, he's coming in with kind of a Internet of Things and digital twins, systems connected to each other. And we're treating it like a workshop. We've been doing work of connecting these different disparate use cases together and putting them into the BIM storm that's going to end up in Washington, D.C. And you can be in person or virtually participating. And Mike and I will both be there.
And then the next slide shows that we have a lot going on. We are having a value and benefits from asset management program focused on park and recreation asset management. And Chris Silkey from Portland, Oregon's Parks and Recreation is going to be there. And he helped shape Portland's asset management policy for the entire city. And it's very much an equity policy also. So we're really looking forward to that. And an Australian colleague who will be talking about parks, recreation, natural assets management also. And then on the 23rd, we're going to be in Washington, D.C. at the NIBS Building Innovation 2024 conference. So I figured we might as well go live from the Capitol Hilton in Washington, D.C. We haven't worked out who we're going to have, but we'll grab somebody or a few people who are available to share their excitement about what they're learning about there. And then there's the actual Brains and Bytes Digital Twin AI Workshop, where we'll be broadcasting live. So you can attend the NIBS conference in person, but this last program that's kind of wrapping up a lot of use cases and bringing them together in this final workshop will be broadcast live. So you can go to our newsletter. We have links in there for you to be able to register for that. But if you can go in person, it's a really good experience. So thank you, Kimon, for your technical assistance and for joining us with comments. Thank you, Marty. And thank you to all of the attendees for your interest in this really exciting topic.
Yeah.
Look forward to hearing from you.
Okay,
Thank you very
you.
much. Yeah.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.